What if the path to true gender equality begins not with grand gestures, but with the courage to question the invisible rules that have shaped our lives since birth? Today, we are diving deep into the heart of transformation with a woman who is doing exactly that, challenging the very foundations of cultural norms and stereotypes that have limited women's potential for generations. I am thrilled to welcome Stephanie Michel to the Boundary Breakers Collective. Stephanie is a university professor, PhD candidate in sociology at the University of Ottawa, and co founder of the Organisation Femme Haitien pour la Liberté, Haitian Women for Liberty, or OFHL. Her doctoral research shines a light on the often invisible experiences of Haitian child and young domestic workers, but her impact extends far beyond academia. Through OFHL, Stephanie and her fellow changemakers are paving the way for women and girls to access roles and rights that were previously beyond reach, deconstructing gender norms through training, awareness campaigns, and advocacy with policymakers. So join us today as Stephanie shares her powerful insights on breaking boundaries, challenging our own complicity in perpetuating stereotypes, and building a more equitable world together. Stephanie, welcome. I am super stoked to have you here. How are you doing?
Thank you, Elena. I'm good. I'm good. What about you?
You are calling in from Haiti, which is for me like the other side of the world. It's a country that raises some ideas and concepts when we hear about it, but it's a country that very few of us really know. You have lived it, you are boundary breaking there. So, my first question always is why do you consider yourself a boundary breaker?
First thing, I take that with the support of others, I founded OFHL. It's a women's organization. So I founded in 2016. So FHL is the acronym, which means in the French-speaking world, Organisation des Femmes Haïtiennes pour la Liberté. And you can say Asian Women for Liberty in English. OFHL aims to encourage and support the effective implementation of positive gender-specific measures at all levels for the effective implementation of women's rights, equality, gender equity, and also the recognition of female leadership. So the
Mhm.
second thing we is that we are paving the way for women and girls, and then we are working to promote gender equality and women's empowerment through concrete actions. So what I mean by concrete actions, so we are doing seminar training, we also execute projects for women and girls, and then I think another thing I would like to emphasize in this regard is that there is an action. I mean, for me, it's the most interesting actions that I take through Women for Liberty in this regard is to enable women to understand that women's issues in the Asian society are not only linked to the patriarchal system. Okay, so they are also linked to the problems of corruption, power governance by government or by state authorities, and in this sense, the OFHL is part of a movement against patriarchy, poor governance, racism, neoliberalism, and so on. And then,
Mhm.
because for us, the relevant question is both like why and how the patriarchal system persists. It's not about the
Mhm.
loss only of patriarchal, it's that why and how the system is still is the system persists exactly. And then if you let me, I have a last element that I would like to emphasize that actually allows me to consider myself as a boundary breaker. Actually, through our training interventions at OFHL, we always enjoy demonstrating women that the issue of female empowerment is certainly linked to the various types of obstacles that I've just mentioned before. But one of the biggest barriers can be also found in a woman's immediate environment. When I say in her immediate environment, I mean in her family or due to her boyfriend, husband. And if you want, I can give you some example after. And I think it can be also the barriers can be also psychological, okay, for women. And then I really recognize that I might not be the best person to explain that psychological dimension, but as a woman conducting research in the field of gender, I do understand that. And we all know that too through the scientific literature. Integrating gender socialization norms or gender roles for several years can actually make women understand that they are defined as the weaker sex compared to the stronger sex, as the
Yeah.
theorists describe it, like Sirius 2021 and Gary Lajoie 2022. And if they don't find some support, that they can actually take they are actually weak as they integrated the norms. And then I don't want to be long, but I actually heard a therapist talking about the subject like that. And I finally understand that the patient has a key role to play in his treatment. A minimum of awareness is actually needed to begin the recovery process. And then in this sense, I really find your podcast so interesting in addressing topics related to barriers overcome by women, welcoming
Mhm.
women from different sectors who come to explain these barriers and how to remove them from the path. So,
Yeah.
congrats for your show. I think it's very interesting by talking about barriers of women and how to overcome them.
Yeah, absolutely. This awareness is so important, and it is something that we need to stress in you're living in a completely different country than I am, and situation and context is very different. And yet I hear so many things that relate also to women in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in North America. It is about indeed understanding that there are so many different levels where female empowerment is reduced or suppressed, and that there's so many levels as well that we need to tackle and to deal with. And you made that very clear in all the different layers that you just explained. What I'm asking myself, Stephanie, is why did you start this? Because I see a lot of us being aware of this, but not doing anything with it. Showing up, speaking up, organizing these things together with others, setting these things up and having the conversations with politicians or people that can change the rules or bend the legal rules, people that can take care of education. How did you start that? What was like the trigger to say, yes, I will stand up and I will speak up?
The first thing is that I spent a good part of my life at the State University of Haiti. The State University of Haiti, obviously, it was an admission course. It's not actually you just go and then you take courses. So you have to take an exam, and then it was very complicated. So I studied sociology, okay, and then I also took an advanced courses in about social solidarity economics and local developments. And then I also had a master degree in population and development, and also began studying law too at the State University, even if I didn't complete the study. But I did all of this at the State University. Okay. So I think it's a kind of giving back, and then I'm trying to do right now. And then on the other end, I had the opportunity to participate in intellectual activities, and I was also lucky to have people around me, people who helped me a lot. Such I'm thinking about in other border actually who run a student organization called Students for Liberty. He invited me to participate in these activities, and I even also followed in his footsteps in these activities through the organization, Student for Liberty. And then finally, I think after studying accounting at a private university, because I also studied accounting too. I studied accounting at a private university and then switching to sociology at the state university. You got me? So I took a different socioeconomic view of the situation because before I used to think that everything was basically about administration, bureaucracy. But when I joined the state university, by studying sociology, by doing the master degree in population and development, I actually realized that there are thousands of people, of women and girls who have been forgotten by the system. And then I said to myself, I have to do something. I have to do something to help them. It's, as I told you, it's like a kind of giving back to the country that contributed so much to my education and allowed me to pursue my studies at PhD level in sociology at Ottawa University. And then I believe also I have a mission to support and help other girls and women who have not had actually the same opportunities as me. Actually, I also have my barriers. I also have some obstacles, but I actually find a way to overcome them. And then I became convinced that we can do something. We actually can do something to improve the status of women and girls, some forgotten, some women who have been forgotten by the system. And then so I remember I called some friends and even strangers. Some of them actually, some of whom agreed to join me to work on the my leadership, but some of them didn't actually agree. So I didn't care, but certainly I know that we launched the first major public meeting. I remember it was on August 2016, and then we launched at the State University of Haiti. I think there were around only 10 young women there. So actually, we did it. And then since the day, we are actually working to improve women condition in the Asian society. And so we just came to commemorate 9 years of existence. So I think it's very interesting because we're on the path to accomplish our mission, okay, to improve the women condition in the Asian society. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. If you look at the obstacles that you had to deal with in order to grow this movement and to make things happen, what were the main obstacles that you encountered?
First of all, we have some obstacles by just being a feminist organization because in the Asian society, when you are a feminist, they put you a kind of label. And then in some environments, you are not really welcome just as a feminist because they put some labels. Sometimes they don't really see you really actually in a good eyes. But some other environments, it's not like that. So we have some challenge just for being a feminist organization. Okay. This is the first one. And then we also have some social, I actually said it, some social constraints. We also have some human and economic resources issues too, okay? But we actually working to overcome them, okay? Funding issues like any other organization, okay? I think the biggest challenge is related to the social political crisis leading to the phenomenon of insecurity. Okay, I don't know if you hear about the phenomenon of insecurity in the Asian society. There are actually several armed groups. And then we also have the phenomenon of kidnapping and so on. So if they kidnap you, you don't have money, you can actually, if you are a woman, you can actually be raped or you can actually be killed. If you are a man, the population cannot actually move freely. And then the OFHL, like every other organization, cannot carry out some interventions. So right now, if you are in Port-au-Prince and actually you want to go to the south coast of the country, you can't travel by land. So you have to do it by sea or by plane, which is very expensive. I have an example about that. We just completed a computer engineering project about web development, coding, programming for women and girls. Actually, we were unable to travel there to meet with some participants due to insecurity. And then it's very complicated. In this case, my colleague Jerry and I wrote a newspaper article on this subject entitled The Problem of Gender-Based Violence in the Context of Security Crisis and Disarmament in Haiti. And this article cites a report from a rights organization called human rights organization called CARDH. An estimated 500,000 illegal firearms are in circulation in Haiti. As I said, I'm citing just CARDH 2020, the report of CARDH 2020. Since 2020, that means long before the deterioration of the social political crisis, the current social political crisis. So if you want to count now, if you want to count again the number of some illegal firearms in circulation in the Asian society right now in 2025, I bet we can have more or even double of this number. And then,
Yeah.
so this is a great irony because in Haiti, not even the smallest part of a firearm is manufactured. And moreover, there is a firearm embargo on Haiti. And then, as I always said it, in crisis situation, I mean, in the context of social political crisis, the burdens increase among the most vulnerable people, women, children, and it's so complicated right now in the Asian society right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Stephanie, Haiti is one of the countries, like, not too many, luckily, but there are others that, like, social media and media do not report about. The focus
Yeah.
is on Gaza, on certain areas in Africa, on Yemen, Middle East in general. But basically, this is happening, and we don't know about this. And so I can only imagine how isolated you sometimes must feel with that movement and with all the energy that you put into that together with your colleagues. And I can also only imagine the barriers that you, but the Haitian population, and especially women and children, must have in order to develop, in order to get the education they are entitled to, the healthcare they are entitled to, things like that. So it's a very sad situation that doesn't get the attention it deserves. And so with the movement, with the Women for Liberation, are you able to go cross-border to liaise with other organizations in the world that have also the power to make a change, to address politicians, not only in your country, but like supranational? Do you see possibilities there?
We do have some partners, but most of them are local. Since our foundation in 2016, we were part of a international platform, and then we have actually some local partners. So I'm talking about some feminism organization. So we do have some partners actually, but we don't actually have some international partners. Even if we actually receive some funding from some international organization, Women Win. So Women Win is a European structure, just come to give us some funding to execute the project in Petit Guave, the project that I've mentioned before, where we train some women and girls about coding, programming. We are on the way to have some international partners, but we are working with so many local partners. And we just came to collaborate with Femme Haitien about a project. It was about menstruation.
So, in what areas do you want to have impact if you have to set priorities? Is this in like education? Is it in health? Is it in financial independence? Do you have like certain areas that are priority for you to support or maybe even liberate Haitian women?
Okay, so you are talking about our areas of intervention. We are working on education. So we are training women and girls about human rights, women rights, gender equality and equity, something like that. We female leadership, things like that. And then so we are working in this sphere of technology because as I said to you, we just came to complete our engineering project. So we were showing women how to code. So it was about development web. So I can say education and technology, and we have around two projects. So we will have to try the political sphere too, because we were part of a feminism platform. So we intend to make some proposition. We actually started to do it since 2018 because there were about a kind of constitutional amendment. So we are about to make some proposition to take the gender equality into account in the new constitution. So we are working a bit in the political sphere because it's also a part of our area of intervention.
You are now like 9 years in this movement in a very important role. What are you most proud of?
What makes me so proud right now is that when we started in at the State University in 2016, so as I said it to you, we were just 10.
Yeah,
We were just
10 people showing up, right?
so right now we just came to have our nine years, and then we actually accomplish a lot of things. So for the Asian society. I'm thinking about some project like 50 equal 50. That was the biggest project. There was no funding from donors. We just did it ourselves. Did it by our own investment. I am very proud of that project. We formed seven teams composed by only by women. And then so we went to visit middle school and high school to raise awareness about gender issues. It was crazy because when I said to the girls that we're gonna do that project, they said, how can we do that? Because we don't have any funding. I said, okay, so we're gonna find a way. What if we invest our money? So we did it. And then actually nearly 600 students were reached by this program. And it was personally funded because we didn't have any funding from donor. And then this question is a part of our movement at OFHL. That I think it's a kind of thing that allow us to keep on, So with or without funding, okay, so we gonna pursue our dream. And then I think it's a kind of motivation that pretty exciting that can give you some strength to keep on. So it's not about money. It just you have a dream, you have to keep on your mission, you have to keep on your goal. So you just have to do it. And then it's not money which motivates you, but it's just about conviction. I think this is one of the things that I personally, I'm personally so proud of it. The project of 50 co 50 in 2018. So as I said to you, nearly 600 students were reached by this program. We go to the school, we talk to the students about gender equality, gender human rights, and then how women can actually leave the private sphere and integrate the public one because in the society we all know that just the world let the women knows that they have to stay in the private sphere. So that was a kind of project that gave me kind of energy.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Stephanie, you're doing your PhD in Canada, in Ottawa. Most of us, most of the audience also of the Boundary Breakers Collective has been growing up and living and working in what we call privileged situations, right? We have no clue what it is to have to even travel by air or by sea in order to reach another city because it is not safe to go over land. These are things that are like not in our reality. So what is it that what message or leadership lesson would you like to share with the audience that you have learned in these 9 years with that organization, but also taking all these courses, achieving all these beautiful things, doing your PhD abroad? So, what is it as a leader that you would like to share as a messenger learning with our audience that actually has no clue of the circumstances that you have been struggling with in order to achieve all these things?
Gender equality begins with identifying and challenging male privilege. We all know that gender norms that implicitly or explicitly dictate the behaviors, attitudes, roles, and appearances expected of individuals based on the sex at birth, male or female. But gender inequalities are not natural but constructed. They can actually be transformed through collective mobilization, solidarity, and individual commitment. And I would like to emphasize something about individual commitment, because for me, this is the most interesting thing. So, honestly, one of the biggest lessons that I learned during my years as director of the OFHL is that gender equality must be achieved through the social deconstruction of gender norms, as we know it from the scientific literature. Okay, we all know that we have to find them by the social deconstruction of gender norms. However, I would like to place a particular emphasis on the issue of individual commitment in the fight for gender equality, which must be achieved through self-criticism for me. The social deconstruction of gender norms should be achieved through self-criticism of every action to gender equality. Part of social deconstruction, why do I say analysis of self-criticism of every action? So, Helena, don't you see how personally it is sometimes difficult to change a long established habit and switch to another one? It's so
Yeah,
difficult. It's so difficult.
absolutely.
And I think it is much more difficult if we are not aware of this situation, you know?
Absolutely.
And you always ask others to do this, to do that, or but always do what you ask others to do. Do you always do what you ask others to do it to do? I think it's always easy to say, like in training session, that we must fight for gender equality in theory. But what is the situation in practice? So what is the situation in practice? I have an example of this. So I have a friend of mine. She works in women's organization, and then she always thanks her husband every time he does a household work because she believed that her husband is helping her with tasks that she has to do as a woman. Do you got me? Even if she's working at the women organization for a long time, she think that it's not a work. It's actually it's in helping hand. Her husband is about to give her just a helping hand. But for me, I think he's doing his job because I think it's a matter of social justice. It's a
Yeah,
duty for any man who believes in sharing domestic tasks. It's not about a helping hand. We should start by self-criticize, by auto-criticize our action about social disconstruction of gender norms. If we don't do
yeah,
that, we can actually ask people to do this, to do that, but concretely, we can actually achieve what we want to do about.
You can start with yourself, right? And it's also, if you have children,
Yeah.
you are a role model, you can also start to include it in the education of your children, because in too many situations, we see that boys are treated different than girls. And you already installed these differences and these ideas that girls and women are taking care of the domestic tasks and boys are doing the more technical things by the way that we treat our children, and that we allow our children to get away, to get off some certain tasks. So I believe that, like you say, we can do a lot ourselves by not only criticizing ourselves, but questioning, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Is this something that we just do because we've seen it all the time? Our parents did it like that? But what does it mean? What's the impact? How do we basically impact our children and their vision on life in general with keeping that behavior going? Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, that is it.
There's a lot that we can do ourselves, right? Yeah. And I would say not only in countries like Haiti, it's basically something universal still going on. We have, of course, because like you say, we have a different political and social economic context.
Yeah.
So for us, it is easier to do and to say this. I can only imagine how hard and tough it must be, and how much additional challenges that you have because of the place where you live in order to set that up. Absolutely kudos for you and the
Yeah, yeah.
organization. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to say something about children. Our children always living in in a household where, how can I say that? I wanted to say the organizations, they actually have to take this thing into account in their interventions. Okay, so they actually have to tackle these barriers from different levels. And then they don't actually have to work just with women. You know what? Because we have to educate women. We have to execute some projects for women and girls. We have to train them. But actually, I think we have to invite men. We have to take men into account our interventions. You know what? As a theorist like Jane Scott said something which is very interesting for me. She said that you cannot really understand the women condition without taking into account men, because every woman has a man in her environment. If it's not a father, it's going to be her brother or cousin or actually a husband. And so you have to train men in order to deconstruct what they've learned a long time ago about wars and gender equity. So I think it's very interesting. And in Haiti, according to the biggest survey in the Haitian society, 29% of women aged from 15 to 49 have been victims of physical violence since the age of 15. Since the age of 15, and among non-single women, this violence was perpetrated in 45% of cases by their partner. So actually, I think it's very interesting to invite men in to the feminism organization, also human rights organization, invite men in, take men into account in their intervention. They have to train them in order to deconstruct some gender norms, some stereotypes, some cliches, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is a systemic thing. And even if we are aware, because sometimes it's even harder when we are aware, but we don't see the environment changing and we don't see the same awareness growing in the environment that is impacting our situations. So yes, there's absolutely a need to educate men and boys in terms of how women empowerment and women equality can contribute to a better world. Because if they don't see a reason to change, why would they change? You can, of course, enforce it, but we all know that is not really the way that things are going fast and easy.
We have to continue to fight for women's rights and gender equality, because freedom is not given, but it is taken. If we don't continue, we have achieved will be lost. No way. And then besides, I do believe So, because I am a descendant of the first independent Black people who fought to end slavery and who also win the Battle of Vertier, in which heroines also participate as heroes in the indigenous army, forcing the French army of the time, Napoleon's army, to surrender. I do believe that we have to fight for what we want. We have to, because they won't give you your freedom. And then another thing, I think, Helena, biologically speaking, we are all fighters. You are all fighters because at the moment of fertilization, it could have been another human being. You got me? You see what I'm saying? It could have
Yes, I
been
understand.
another human being, but not you, not me. But I said
Mm.
to myself, since it is me, I have to take this very seriously.
Mm.
I have to keep on to fight for my freedom, to fight for what I want, for what I want for a better society, what I want to have a society where women and men have actually the same right to achieve
Mm.
their goal.
Yeah, it is what you say, Stephanie. I hope that one day things will change, but it is true that freedom is not given, it is to be taken. I hope one day that shifts and freedom will be given and equality will be given, and everybody will understand that this is a birth, and we are still a long way from that. And I'm so grateful that you are doing this work, this very important work. And I'm so happy also to be able to give it an additional platform and some additional traction, because it is about, like you say, awareness, not only in your country, but also in the world in general, to see what connections can be built, what relationships can be built in order to reinforce this movement and make it bigger, faster. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thank you so
doing what you do and for being who you are. I absolutely appreciate that. And it's beautiful work you do. And I hope we also triggered here the audience to reflect and to challenge their views on who they are and what they do and how they can contribute to women empowerment wherever in the world. And if you want to get in touch with Stephanie, we will make sure that all the information is in the show notes below. So you can get in touch and you can maybe see how you can support her, how you can collaborate, whatever is possible. Just use your imagination, because there's a lot that we can do and there's a lot to be done. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being here. And thanks everyone for being with us and for allowing us to awaken you a little bit in terms of how privileged we are and how much work there is to do in order to make this world a better place for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Elena. Thanks for having me. It was such a pleasure. I'm very excited to be there. So
Thank you.